There are many references in Shakespeare to horses. Perhaps the most famous comes at the end of the play Richard III, when King Richard III finally, after all his wicked dealings and all the people he has murdered, is confronted on the battlefield and cries out, a horse, my kingdom for a horse." Perhaps that's the most famous references to horses in the whole of Shakespeare. Actually, when it comes in the play, it's an echo of what happened to Richard when he woke from a terrible dream. He was haunted the night before the battle by all the ghosts of the people that he had murdered. And when he finally wakes up from this dream, he shouts out, "Give me another horse, bind up my wounds. Have mercy, Jesus. Soft, I did but dream. Give me another horse, bind up my wounds." As though the whole of his energy that he developed his life to, he now suffers as this terrible dream, these ghosts haunting back at him, the mistake that he'd made. Is it possible that he could abandon that energy and give me another horse, bind up my wounds as though there? But of course it is much too late for him to that. And so in the final battle, when he is down, a horse, my kingdom for a horse, he's fighting on foot. And his sidekick Catesby says, "Withdraw, my lord, I'll help you to a horse." "Slave, I have set my life upon a cast, and I will stand the hazard of the die," insulting this very guy who would help him, calling him a slave, and then recognizing that he has set his life upon a cast, throwing the cast, the throw of the dice. "I will stand the hazard of the die. I will run my life as a gamble. That is the way I chose to do it, and I will stick with it." And then comes his cry, a horse, my kingdom for a horse." But there is no other horse to rescue him and restore him to his kingdom. Of course, horses appear a lot in Shakespeare. References to horses there are altogether some 200 references, more, nearly 300, I think, references to horses in the plays of Shakespeare. A man on horseback, because of course, in a powerful position. He's taller than the people that are around him, and he has this energy which he can control, which is part almost of him. It's difficult, I think, to talk about symbolism in Shakespeare very often because Shakespeare's subtleties are way beyond any glib definition of, a horse represents us, or that sort of thing. But it's not difficult to think back to those mythological figures of the ancient world, the centaur, half man, half horse, the body of a horse, and then from the waist upwards, the chest of a man appearing out of the body of the horse. And they were pretty violent people, but of course they had the cleverness of man as well as the power of the animal. We might just look at one other play. In the Scottish play, after the murder of the king, an old man and a character called Ross meet, and they talk about the terrible things that has happened in the weather. "It is unnatural. On Tuesday last, a falcon, towering in his pride of place, was by a mousing owl hawked and killed." The falcon killed by the owl. And then Ross says, "And Duncan's horses." Duncan's the king who was murdered. "A thing most strange and certain. His horses, beauteous and swift, the minions of their race, turned wild in nature, broke their stalls, flung out, contending against obedience, as they would make war with mankind." And And the old man talking to Ross says, it is said that they did eat each other. And the extraordinary response of Ross is, they did so, to the amazement of my eyes that looked upon it. Extraordinary report of how the murder of the king has changed the world, in which such extraordinary things could happen, that the horses could eat each other.